Our winter squash grow along is going to be starting in mid-April with a planned planting out around mid-May. The variety that we're using for this grow along is a variety called Red Curry or Cheeky Curry, and that's a smaller producing squash that will produce hopefully more. If you've got a larger variety that you're choosing to grow, then it's likely that you'll get around sort of 3 to 4 squash per plant, whereas these we might be managing sort of 6 to 8 if we're lucky. If you haven't ordered your seeds yet and you'd like to get the same varieties that I'm growing, then we have a discount code for Tamar Organics. To get that, you'll just need to sign up for our newsletter, so comment newsletter, and I'll send you the link. And in there, you'll find the discount code and all the other information for the grow alongs and some other suggestions of different varieties that you can grow as well this year. There are lots of different varieties we can choose from, and we are looking at winter squash here, not summer squash. Summer squash are varieties that don't actually store as well, so they're eaten over the summer, whereas winter squash are varieties that we're going to be harvesting usually around October time, and then we'll be storing them for the next couple of months. You could also grow pumpkins with this grow along. They are slightly different though. They have much thinner skins and a more watery texture inside, more stringy, and they don't store as well as the winter squash. So just be aware of that. If you are growing pumpkins, then it is more likely that they would be used for decoration or eating very quickly. My last frost day is usually around the beginning of May. If, however, yours is quite a few weeks after that, then you are going to want to hold off of sowing these. And I would say no more than sort of 4 weeks before your last frost date would be good, or when you're planning to put them out. So really do want warmer temperatures. They're not going to like cold weather, and it can stunt them and make them really struggle. You can sow these squash directly after your last frost date if that's something you want to do, but if you do have any pressure from any slugs or snails, then they are likely to target these. So usually it is easier to start them in pots, harden them off, and then move them outside. Winter squash are really quite large plants, and they are likely, depending on the varieties, to grow and spread all over the floor, or up a support if you can offer that as well. They can be tied in and grown vertically. Some varieties will do better at this than others. So although we will have a planting distance of around a metre, the chances are that they will take many, many metres off the ground to actually continue to spread. So one of the things that you can do, and I'll be doing this time, is growing my sweet corn on the other side of the bed, which will be beneficial for the sweet corn as well. You could also do that with something like beans. You may find that it's difficult to then get into that patch and harvest them. So for drying beans, that would be really beneficial. If you are on an allotment where you have some areas that are covered in plastic, so maybe you haven't managed to get to those areas yet and weed them, then one thing you could also do is actually take some holes into that plastic and plant these plants in that area. And they're quite hungry plants, so you'd want to make sure that you provide them plenty of food in the hole before you do so. But actually, you might as well utilize that space if you haven't got to it yet and grow the food from it. To sow the seeds, we're just looking at little pots like this, and I will also go over how I pre-germinate mine, which is what I do into my soil blocks. Then we'll want some peat-free compost. They are larger seeds, so as long as your compost isn't full of really large pieces, then you wouldn't necessarily need to sieve it. I do sieve mine regardless, just because it will help open up and have more oxygen in the mix as well, which will help it germinate. Sowing depth is around 1 centimetre, and then we're looking for sowing temperatures of around 20 to 25 centimetres. So for most of us, that'll be a matter of taking them in the house. Then we'll need to keep them frost-free and protected right up and past our last frosts. If we do have a colder start to the summer, then we may be needing to cover these with some larger plastic pots just to keep them warm, or even some fleece or something like that once they've been planted out. When it comes to bed prep for these, they are very hungry plants. If you've got an area that is free and ready where you know they're going to go, then I would start laying down a bag or two of manure on that area now. Mine's already planted. I've got some kale in there, so I can't do that. Or if you don't have that ability, then one thing we can do is we can add plenty of manure around the area when we do plant them out, And we can also add something like comfrey pellets or chicken manure pellets, something like that, to the hole, just to help them get a really good kickstart. When it comes to pests and diseases, the main pest that we're going to find with these is slugs. So I will always suggest that when we plant out the initial ones is to have a couple of spare ones ready to pop in place if they are just taken out straight away. Once they are larger plants, this is something that we don't usually need to worry about. It is just the initial stage when they could just eat through the stem. I also do have problems with things burrowing into the actual stem of the plant when they first go out. So I just use a part of a toilet roll center. So we'll have a look at doing that just to protect the stem and try to stop any bugs actually eating through that and then laying inside there. And then the other thing we're likely to find with these is some issues with powdery mildew. This can just be because the leaves are getting older and they're just more susceptible to it. Or it could also be that maybe we've got a year where it's not quite as wet and they're not being kept as well watered. But this is very unlikely to actually cause any issues with the plant, and it happens so late in the season that the leaves will be starting to die back then. So we can either just cut them out and remove them, or we can leave them to die off depending on how bad it is. Please let me know if you have any questions, and we will hopefully see you in just a couple of weeks now to start sowing these seeds.